we titled our presentation Together in Isolation. Sorry. So just a little bit of background. The movie was set in 1981 and it was based off of the novel written by John, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, in 2004. It's set in the 1980s, and this is somewhat important. So Sweden was actually partially under the control of the United States and the Soviet Union during the 80s, so the economy was regressing, and there wasn't a big sense of community throughout Sweden.
So this story is essentially a story of survival. We see that a lot in this the course of Oscar's childhood, as well as Ely's trying to survive, which brings us to our thesis, which the strength to survive does not have to come solely from within an individual. That strength can be derived from a connection to others.
So we thought that the color scheme of the movie was kind of important. Basically, it's a bland color scheme of basically a white to black scale, and there's a bunch of like just red effects from Ely mainly. And we think that the bland color scheme mainly reflects Oscar's desperation and loneliness, and the reason why there's so much color basically from Ely is because she kind of pulls the life out of the town, but like gives it to Oscar, and it's like very important that like she brings color to Oscar's life.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about their relationship, and just to start, I'm going to give y'all just like a quick rundown of like the movie in whole. So basically at the beginning, it's clear that Ely and Oscar aren't very close. So their first interaction, initially Ely's like, I cannot be friends with you, like it's never gonna happen. And this is because like she's very afraid of letting anyone into her life because she's a vampire, and because she just, as you saw with her guardian, like she just ends up either killing them or damaging them in some way that they can't continue. And so at first she remains separate from the outside world and has Hawken get her blood. So she stays inside, only goes out at night. And the reason they meet up is because she goes out at night while Oscar is like practicing, or is like taking out his revenge on the tree. And so as the story continues, Ely and Oscar begin to build a closer relationship, and that's shown through the couple of scenes with the Rubik's Cube. So Oscar realizes that Ely like never celebrates her birthday, doesn't even know what it is, like what day her birthday is, and so he decides that he's gonna give her his Rubik's Cube out of like kindness and out of like she just doesn't have anything. And so this is the start of their relationship in the movie, and as the movie continues, their relationship grows. And so at this point, they're very close to each other. They can talk through Morse code in the walls, and they're just extremely close, and they're the only people that each other have. And so they learn more about the world through their interactions. So for Ely, this means that she's trying to act like a normal person. So she's like eating the candy even though she can't because of her because she's a vampire, and so she ends up throwing up. But even still, she doesn't want Oscar to see that. And furthermore, Oscar is able to be more sympathetic about the fact that Ely's not like she states the fact that she's not a girl, and he doesn't care. He's like, I still want to be friends with you, and even asks her to go steady at one point. So what is this? So okay, go ahead.
So as I mentioned before, like the story is a lot about survival.
Go ahead.
It's a lot about survival, and to kind of contextualize that whole thing, a lot of that is a consequence of parents failing and other adults failing with their supervision. We see this as like Oscar's parents, although there are scenes where they show that they're caring for him, like they're Oscar's mother when she's brushing her teeth and they kind of play around, or when Oscar's going sledding with his father, but they still ultimately fail to kind of understand Oscar's social life. They can't empathize with the fact that like he's struggling, he's being bullied, and Hakan, although he's supposed to be Ely's supervisor and provide for her, we see that he's super clumsy and he ends up having to like disfigure himself and ultimately offer his life the existence of bullies is kind of an implication of failed parenthood, because the reason they're bullies in the first place is because of a lack of education. We have Connie's older brother. We think that an older brother would try to be a good example, but he actually intensifies the bullying by turning it into violence, where we see at the end of the movie where they're potentially going to either drown Oscar or just outright cut him and kill him. And the gym teacher at the end is also pretty irresponsible. It's like he left Oscar, who's learning how to swim, in the pool by himself. Like, that kid could drown. So there's multiple instances where they've just failed as adults, and that's why we had this instance where children are almost having to survive by themselves. And that leads to how Oscar and Ely help each other survive. So Ely really helps Oscar by helping him develop the courage required to fight back against the bullies. There's that one scene where she's like, "Oh, you've never fought back, have you? And you have to hit hard." But then he questions what if they hit back? But she says he has to fight anyway, and that leads to the scene where he actually whacks that kid in the ear. Then we have that one scene, this picture comes from, where Black, who's trying to get revenge on Ely for having caused the death of both of his friends. Oscar's in there and he kind of alerts Ely, which saves her effectively. And then at the end, although this is where it kind of splits of the definition of survival, whether it's just surviving as in being able to live a normal life versus live a life or death survival, where you could argue that Oscar would not have had to worry about life or death survival had he not fought back in the first place. But it's still Ely helping Oscar survive in the end, because she actually prevents his murder.
So this is arguably the most important scene in the movie, when Ely says you have to let me in. He says, well, what if I don't? And she walks inside anyways, knowing that she's gonna be in pain and will start bleeding. This is sure, physically Oscar lets Ely into his home, but also metaphorically this is Ely letting Oscar into her life, because she knows that she's gonna be in pain and she's gonna be bleeding, but she wants to be with him anyways and she wants him to be there. So I think that's very important to know. And this is just.
So puzzles actually play a pretty large role in their relationship together. So apparently vampires enjoying puzzles is part of vampire canon, which I didn't know until researching. But so Ely follows that same thing where she has the Rubik's Cube that she enjoys, that metal egg, there's a little puzzle in her house in Morse code. So that egg is actually supposed to be a metaphor for Ely's shell that she places around her life that needs to be there, because without it, she'd be destroyed by society and killed, or she wouldn't live if she didn't have Hakan to help her. But Oscar touching it and it breaks is Oscar actually breaking the shell for himself. So letting himself into her life. And so after that whole scene where Oscar goes into her home and learns more about her is when they really start to become closer together. So these puzzles are also the only way that that Ely really shows more interest in the living world. Because before with Hakan would go out and kill people, bring dead blood back to her. But this is where she's interacting with Oscar, or the Rubik's Cube is a pop culture phenomenon at the time. It was just invented a couple years earlier than 1981 when it was supposed to take place. Oscar also cares enough to interest himself in puzzles, because before he owned the Rubik's Cube, but he didn't know how to solve it until Ely came along and taught him. And then he also showed that he takes interest in Ely by spending his own time after class, staying late, that kind of thing, learning Morse code just to communicate between the two of them.
So necessities versus wants is a big contrast point in their relationship when they learn from each other. And so necessities more here with Ely, where she kills out necessity because she needs blood to survive. So I mean, you can see that scene where Oscar offered her a cookie and she ate it, knowing that she can't digest it or anything, and she just throws it up everywhere. So you know that she has to kill people to get blood somehow. And But Oscar is more on the Juan side, where he's constantly being bullied and his life is not that great, and he always wants to fight back. You can see that scene with the picture where he was acting like he was stabbing the tree with an axe, saying "Squeal, pig, squeal, squeal," and with Ely, she has to kill him, but Oscar doesn't have to. So when she sees him being bothered by all these bullies, I mean, she encourages him to fight back while explicitly not explicitly saying to kill them or anything. And through their relationship, they always learn between the balance of necessities versus wants, and they learn to balance those two out accordingly.
So another central theme of the movie is that of revenge. So like Ely is more forced to reject society instead of being rejected by society, because society for the large part doesn't know that she exists. But Oscar is. So his peers, the bullies, are tormenting him and actually causing physical pain to him. And his parents and Mr. Avila, like, they're pretty much ignoring him, where he's able to wander around during the day, do what he likes, that kind of stuff, even though he's only 12 years old. So this rejection leads them to resent those around them, and in Oscar's point, to seek revenge, whereas Ely actually is only seeking to protect or avenge him. So Oscar begins a lot of things in this movie, like the process of fighting back, which is like Ely serves as a catalyst for that by telling them that he should fight back, but he's the one that takes the action for that, starts that battle, but it ends up backfiring. So when he hits Connie, Connie goes and finds his older brother Jimmy, which escalates the situation much more. But Ely finishes off by killing the bullies in the end, and then sparing Andreas, who actually wasn't really a bully. So another one was the Rubik's Cube, because Oscar, who had it for who knows how long, still hadn't been able to solve it completely. He finished one side, but then Ely, after knowing it, actually only knowing what a Rubik's Cube was for just that one day, figured out how to solve it. So it's, despite her like physical appearance, she's actually much stronger than many of those around her.
And this brings us to our conclusion. So after looking through Oscar's and Ely's story of surviving together, we can kind of draw an idea that kind of applies to the whole world rather than just within this film. And that's that surviving can be one of the most challenging things we face in our lives on a day-to-day basis. But we can resist these external pressures together, and through that, we are able to survive because we're stronger when we fight together than alone. And that other people in our lives are capable of bringing out our greatest strengths.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna give you 3 minutes to finish up your evaluation.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So